Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you all how to create the joints in the upper portion of the body. So let's go ahead and just get started. The first thing we're going to do is we can switch actually from modeling now, and we're going to switch to rigging. And from here, that's right up here in the top left corner, we're going to switch from modeling to rigging. And then from here, in my side viewport, I want to go ahead and create some joints in here. So um, the first thing I want to do, it probably does it automatically, but just in case it doesn't, shading, under the shading tab, go to X-ray joints. And you'll basically need to do that in every viewport. I mean, I recommend doing it in every viewport, but so I've got X-ray joints on in every viewport here. So now I'm going to go up to the very top here and go to skeleton, and I'm going to go to create joints. And from here, I'm going to start right here at what is known as the root joint. And I'm going to just kind of click and drag. And let me press enter, and I'm going to redo that really quickly because under display, under animation, you can change the joint size. And I want to change mine to 1, just so you can see it better. By default, it should be at 1. So let me start that again. Skeleton, create joints, and then we're going to start here. This is known as the root joint, right? And then we'll go up to the waist. We'll do one in about the middle spine, maybe even one about in the give or take here. One about where the arms are, and that's going to be like our chest joint also. Then we'll do one at the base of the neck. We can do one in the neck also if you'd like. And then we'll go, we can go here to the top of the neck. And then we're going to go one to the back of the head. And then one to about the top of the forehead, give or take. And once you're said and done with that, press enter. Now from here, we're just going to go ahead and rename these. So the first one, you'll notice they all highlight because they're all parented basically to one another. So let me just show you really quickly before I start renaming these. If I create one joint and then I create another joint, right? These two joints here. If I click on one, hold shift and select the next one, and then press P for parent or edit parent. Select one, shift select the other one, press P to parent. You'll notice that they connect, right? So let me undo that. Now let me show you this way. If I click on this one, hold shift, select on the next one, press P, and it'll parent, but it'll parent in a different hierarchy. So now this one is sort of the one that controls it, whereas this one is sort of its lone. So hopefully that'll help you a little bit understand how these are working, but as we continue working with them, you'll start to understand more. So I'm going to click on the first one. You'll notice it selects the entire chain of joints, and we can go ahead and rename this one root underscore JNT. Now if you do just try to type in a space, I believe it will, and this will be, we'll just call it waist JNT. Let me do it with a space just to see. And it does automatically put in the underscore, but I just type it in out of habit. I'll call this like spine 1 JNT, spine 2 JNT. I'll call this one chest JNT. And you can include more joints in your torso here, in your upper torso. Basically, the more joints, the more flexibility you'll have, right? You'll be able to maneuver a little bit more. But I'm just going to stick with sort of like the bare neck 1 JNT, neck 2 JNT, neck 3 JNT. I'm going to call this for JNT, and I'll just call this one head JNT. Okay, so JNT is just like sort of like a little acronym kind of for joint, so or abbreviation. So we've got all of our joints for the spine running all the way up through the head. Now it is very similar to sort of like how a human joint system is set up. However, it also does have its differences, but it does kind of follow that same route, if you will. Now, by doing it in the side viewport, and you can only create joints in the orthographic viewports. So that would be like your front, your side. You cannot create joints in your perspective view. And actually, it's kind of weird, but for the most part, just stick with me. Try to avoid creating joints in the perspective view. Most of the I know it is possible to do, but most of the time it won't work, and there's certain reasons for it. But it will always work in your orthographic viewport. So don't. If you try to create joints in your perspective viewport, typically it's not going to work. All right. So now for the arm, I'm going to switch to my front viewport, and I'm going to start about here for the clavicle. That's the clavicle joint. Then I'm going to go to the shoulder, and I probably want to keep this a little bit more in the center. Then to the elbow, to the wrist, and I'm just going to press enter. Now I want to show you really quickly that you can actually move these joints without having to, let's just say you accidentally clicked somewhere. You don't have to, you know, shift this down and shift this up, even though that would work. You can, if you hold D for edit pivot, you can just do something like that. And that's kind of basically where we're at. We want to keep it sort of about that region. Because we want this to have this subtle bend in the shoulder. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to switch to our top view. And I might as well put, nah, I'll leave it. I'll leave the X-ray off for now. But I'm going to in my top viewport, I know I can go ahead, and it's always a good idea to keep the wireframe unshaded though. So this way you can kind of follow the topology a little bit cleaner. And then in the elbow, you actually, I'm going to hold D, and I'm just going to shift that back. And that's how you want the elbow, because it's going to, you're basically letting Maya know that you want it to bend in this direction by giving it this angular sort of hierarchy in the chain of these joints. So now let's go ahead and rename them, and we're going to call this L underscore clav JNT, L underscore shoulder JNT, and the L beforehand stands for left, L underscore elbow JNT. And we're gonna when we're all said and done, it's very important you name all of these the same exact naming style, L underscore wrist, JNT. Okay, and now I'm gonna do the hand and the fingers. Two ways I could go about this. I'm not going to use my side viewport. I would either use my front viewport or my top viewport. Now I'm going to switch to my top viewport because I just want to show you really quickly. I go to skeleton, create joints, and I'm going to start here in the finger and just sort of work my way up. There's one more joint, so there should be 4 joints all together. And if you hold shift, it'll actually stay in a perfectly straight line, just so you know. So it's going to be 4 all together. One at the base, one here, one where it curls here, and then one for the tip. And the tip is just basically you're giving it that information on where to bend. But now that I've created this in the top view, I need to go ahead and make sure that this is going to line up properly in both front and side viewport. So just by dragging this up, because it's going to create it at y equals 0, from the top view, just as we did from the side view, it did x equals 0, and here z equals 0. So just so you're aware. So it's always going to create it on one of those axes, which, depending on which viewport you use, on whatever axes that it's basically pointing in, the direction it's pointing in will equal 0. And you can switch to your perspective viewport to kind of take a look at it. I'm going to switch to wireframe on shaded, just so I can kind of see. And from here, I want to do the same exact thing that I did in my, I'm going to hold D and just kind of give these subtle little bends. And I think that's pretty good. So it kind of goes up and then comes down and then comes down. And I'm going to bring this one down just a little bit more actually. And what one last thing you can actually do, this is just a habit of mine. I actually hold V on the very last one and I just snap it to the tip. So that's what I do for that one. So now I'm going to go ahead and rename these L index 1 JNT. And instead of just typing these in every time, I'm just going to copy it, Control C. I'm just going to highlight over here, copy, go to my next one, paste it, and rename it 2. And this one will be 3. And it's very important to name these. And this one will be 4. So now that I've got the first finger done, I can basically just duplicate this. I'm going to press Control D, and I'm just going to slide this over, and I'm going to switch to my front viewport, or top viewport, excuse me, and I'm just going to line this up here. And now what I'm going to do is I know that this is one of my joints in the knuckle, so I'm just going to drag that up a little bit, and this one I'll drag back a little bit, and then this one I'm going to just snap right to the tip. Okay. And now I have to rename these. So this one will be L middle 1 JNT. And I'm going to copy this and paste it and make this 2. I'm going to make this one 3. And I'm going to make this one 4. Okay, duplicate it. I'm going to switch to my top view. I'm going to slide it into place. And I can hold D if I need to. I'm just going to keep that one about there. This one's going to come back a little bit. This one's going to come back a little bit. And then this one I'm going to snap right into place. And this is our ring finger, so this is going to be L ring 1 JNT. And copy. And now we're going to paste it. And L ring 2, so L ring 1, L ring 2. This will be L ring 3. And L ring 4. Okay, again, I'm just going to duplicate this one, Control D, drag it over, and move these into place. Okay. Same thing with the thumb. Pretty much, you can reuse this, but I'm going to just start a new one. Skeleton, create joints, and your first joint in the thumb is actually back here somewhere. You'll feel it. It's back here, right? And then we come up to about here. One in the middle, one at this point, and then one over here. And now I need to switch my viewport and drag it up. And then I'm going to just zoom in a little bit, tapping F on my keyboard. And you'll notice I have a subtle little bend here. And I can do this a number of different ways. try that first. And just use the rotate. I think that'll work pretty well. And I'm going to just slide this back a little bit, because it bends more in this location. And my thumb is actually kind of sideways, if you will. Let me... Yeah, it's like sideways, if you will. And this one is just very slightly different. So I'm going to do it to the model that I think looks more complete here. Okay. Alright, and that'll work. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one. You can do this two different ways, basically. You can select one joint. Oh, and before I do that, we'll name this L thumb 1 JNT. This will be 2. This will be 3. This will be 4. One, 2. I've got one too many joints. So this will be 1, this will be 2, this will be 3, and L thumb 4. Okay, perfect. Alright, so now that I've got all my joints in place, what I need to do next is basically I can select one, hold shift, select the wrist joint, and press P. Or I can just select all of them simultaneously, and you could do that individually for all of them, or you can hold shift on select all of the joints just by the main root of it, basically. And I'm going to hold shift, select the wrist and parent, P for parent, or edit parent. So keyboard shortcut is P. And now I've got the left hand done. So now what I need to do is I'm going to select this joint here at the clavicle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to skeleton and mirror joints. And I'm going to click the little settings box. And you'll get this here. So I want it to mirror across Y and Z. And I want it to search for L and replace with R. And I'm going to click mirror. So I'll show you those settings one more time, but what you can see here is that the left clav and left shoulder and left elbow, etc., all the way down, it automatically renamed it for us, so we don't have to retype everything. Our elbow, our wrist, as long as you named everything properly the first time, it's going to mirror right over. And now I've just basically done that entire process in about a few clicks. So that entire process we did to create the first arm, we just did in like 2 or 3 clicks for the entire second arm, which is really, really cool. So the next thing we want to do is I'm going to take my 2 clavs and I'm going to parent them to the chest joint and press P. And now we've got our entire full upper body skeleton. And I'd actually like to create one more joint, and I can go to skeleton, create joint, and I'm going to switch to my side viewport. Now, there's 2 different ways to do this, but I'm going to put one here and then one here, and I'm going to press enter. Oh, I'm sorry, I did that backwards. So I'm going to go from here down to here to where the jaw is and press enter, and then from here I'm going to shift select that head control and press P. And now I'll have my jaw control here when we get to it later. So I just created one, pressed enter. So this will be like, I'm just going to go ahead and name these. This will be jaw 1. And this will be jaw 2. Okay. Alright, so that's creating the joints for the uh, upper body. So let me change the color of this just so maybe it's a little bit more visible. That'll help a little bit. So you can see the joints I have here are black, and then I have the wireframe on shaded in yellow. And I just wanted to show you how it kind of all works together. So even here, all I have as far as when we get into rigging and animating, this is really the only thing we'll be um, working with until we get into actually binding the skin or the mesh to the skeleton rig. So anyway, that's everything I got for you in this video. If you have any questions, definitely shoot me a message, and thank you for watching.